Hi everyone, welcome to a special edition of Wigan Fan TV this evening. I'm joined by Matt Macaulay, as you can see in the middle of the screen, and then special guest,
Hello.
the BBC's Rugby League correspondent, Dave Woods.
Hello.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening again to join Matt and myself tonight. Are you well?
Always a pleasure, as they say. It's always good talking about rugby league.
Exactly. I mean, we've got so much that we could possibly cover, I guess, in the next 15, 20 minutes. We're going to have taken up a lot of the headlines recently. We'll come on to the Challenge Cup, which is one of the main reasons we obviously invited you onto the show with that coming up this weekend. But how have you taken the news over the past week about Shaun Wane? Did it come as much as a surprise to you as it did to us as fans?
It did. I think it was a genuine surprise all round, wasn't it? We'll talk about it later, but interviewing Sam Tompkins today as part of the BBC's build-up for the Challenge Cup, and he said genuinely the first that they knew was on the morning that he came in and spoke to the players, the morning that the press were told. So,
Wow.
Given the way rugby league has no secrets, and certainly rugby league in Wigan has no secrets. We all knew that Sam was signing for Catalan and New Zealand Warriors about 12 months before either was announced, maybe not that long, but you know what I mean? So the fact that no one had been talking about Shaun Wane leaving Wigan suggests that it was a very, very quick turnaround between a decision having been taken and the announcement being made.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, we've spoken about this obviously last week. We spent about 45 minutes on the show discussing the departure and paying tribute to Shaun Wane. The rumour mill continues with who may take over. The rumours now that Shaun Edwards may take a part-time role back in rugby union. Have you changed your opinion on who you'd like to see in charge of Wigan, Matt?
My opinion stays the same. I've got every faith in the club, and whoever they give us, I think it's going to be the right decision because I'm a yes man. But I still think that my idea of being a bit like having a guest coach every week, a bit like Have I Got News For You, is still probably the best way to go.
I mean, the news came out earlier this week, Dave, that Shaun Edwards, has been the bookies' favourite. I think he's been the bookies' favourite every time there's been a job at Wigan over the past 20 years, maybe. But the news that he's perhaps staying in rugby union, who do you think that Wigan... Shaun Wane said he knows exactly the type of person that Wigan need. I'm not quite sure what that kind of person is, but could you see Shaun Edwards back at Wigan?
Yeah, the rumour mill has got Shaun Edwards and Martin Gleeson as a pairing. I know Martin Gleeson huge raps as an attacking coach at Salford. A lot of respect for him around the game. So Shaun Edwards and Martin Gleeson, who knows? Daryl Powell, obviously. Someone tweeted me the other day saying that it's going to be Daryl Powell because we've just seen him in a restaurant in Wigan. You're just waiting for someone to say sponsored car just been past the garage and they've painted up his sponsored car. It's easy. Yeah. I mean, that's another suggestion. I think Wayne Bennett was floated amongst the rumour mongers, but clearly that's not going to happen because Wigan had it flatly, and I think he's nailed on to stay with Brisbane for that extra year now. Craig Bellamy is here. What about Craig Bellamy for a year? What if he can't come? He can't. If Melbourne decide to cut short his contract because he's going to Brisbane the year after, maybe he's got a year in transition. Who knows? But more realistically, one or two of the names that have been. I keep floating this, and I think I'm the only one who is floating it. So it must be a flawed argument. But I think Paul Deacon must be in the running because I think he was. He was really, really highly thought of, both at Wigan and in the England camp as well. When he was working with Steve McNamara, we were down for the Four Nations, I think it was, a few years back when he was assistant coach. A lot of the England players were talking very highly about him. So, is that a possibility? Adrian Lamb's another possibility. And these all have the advantage of being people with a Wigan background. I know, obviously, Paul Deacon didn't play for Wigan, but he's a Wigan lad and he coached there. So there's a lot of interest, a lot of interesting names flying around at the moment. I suspect they don't know, maybe, which is why a name has not come out unless it is.
I'm sure I remember Paul Deacon playing for Wigan.
Yeah.
Very, very right at the end.
That perhaps leads us on to the Challenge Cup this weekend, and obviously that was one of the main reasons to invite Dave on to the show, was to look forward to the 4 Challenge Cup quarterfinals this weekend. 2 of them you have on BBC. You have Warrington Wigan on the Saturday, and then Saints Hull on the Sunday.
Yeah.
Matt, before we come to Dave about the weekend, obviously the defeat on Friday was a shock result, and perhaps we can put that down to the week leading into last week. And apparently, it took 4 hours for the Wigan team to get to Hull KR on Friday night as well.
Yeah.
How important do you think this game is on Saturday for Wigan? It's obviously a massive one, but a defeat on Saturday changes the complexion of the season, surely.
I think it's one of those win at all cost games.
Yeah.
I think
that was succinct.
There's going to be some fired up players. There's going to be, especially after Josh Charnley's comments.
Yeah, definitely.
What's he up to? What's he saying stuff like that for?
Well, the person that we can ask who spent the afternoon with him is Dave. Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about your afternoon with Sam Tompkins and Josh Charnley?
Yeah, we spent the afternoon at Wigan St. Pat's doing some filming for the BBC. So you can see that on Saturday. It's part of the build-up, and really it's talking about their past together, how they first came across each other at St. Pat's. Sam was already at Wigan, but Josh had just started as a 16-year-old at Pat's, and Sam came and saw him, and how their relationship has developed. Talks about their memories of 2011 and 2013. We had a bit of a chuckle with Josh because he's quite a humble lad. I like Josh a lot. He's quite a humble lad. And he was saying that he broke his finger. That's a story you probably know, but he broke his finger in 2011. But yeah, the adrenaline rushed through and he wanted to carry on playing. So I joked with him that in 2002, the last time Wigan had won the trophy before then, it was, of course, the Radlinski final because he played with his bad foot. And maybe we should now christen the 2011 final the Charnley final because he played with a broken finger, but he wasn't having any of that. So yeah, we had. I mean, those two obviously get on, good mates. I think maybe the stuff. I know the headline. My wife actually wrote that story. Good early start. So and I don't think she was over happy with the headline. So sometimes journalists do get caught out by the headline writers. So I think it was a more thoughtful piece that Josh had come out with than maybe the headline.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean they're all fine. They were in great spirits. I mean it's really funny because obviously Sam grew up as a Warrington fan, and he's now playing for Wigan. His heart and soul nailed to the mast of Wigan, obviously. And Josh, of course, a Wigan fan who's now playing at Warrington. So, and there's so many. I mean, Steph Ratchford, whose photograph is up there at St. Pat's Ground as well, because he played there. Jack Hughes. I'm trying to think of the others. There's so many. There's such a crossover between the two clubs, isn't there? But I'm with you, Matt. I think for Wigan, it's a win at all cost game. I think for both sides it is, but especially for Wigan, given the environment that they are in now, in that Shaun Wane is leaving, in that Sam Tompkins is leaving, in that there's a bit Bateman, who knows?
Yeah,
well, we probably think he's leaving. I've forgotten the prop. Golly, forgot his name. Ryan Sutton. Ryan Sutton's leaving. We're led to believe. So I think there's a real kind of let's win it. Because
what bothers me is that if we're going to lose again, it will raise more questions. I worry will become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and this whole kind of doom and gloom thing will take the club by the throat. Really,
I can't see that. I don't think from within. I think I can't see that. I can understand a little bit about what happened at Hull KR the other night because, as you say, the journey. Hull KR were obviously. I mean, Hull KR played as well as they played all season apparently the other night, and maybe there was a bit of an emotion. Somebody said that the players were saying before the game, we're not going to take any emotion into this game because Shaun's leaving. Well, as soon as you mention that, it's like saying, don't think about an elephant. And you can't stop thinking about an elephant, So maybe there was...
thinking about an elephant.
You're thinking about an elephant. Good job I didn't say anything else, isn't it? So I think we're going to be fine. I mean, the season they've had this season, if they lose against Warrington, and they might do because that's a great cup tie, and they're two very, very good teams. It's really hard to predict that.
Yeah,
but if they do, then I don't think the wheels are coming off. I think it just kind of they batten down the hatches and get their focus on making a grand final.
If anybody's got any questions for Dave in the sort of last 10 minutes of the show, please feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll put them to him. One interesting battle that takes place on Saturday is the one that I think really summed up the Magic Weekend game 2 weeks ago. Is Josh Charnley and Liam Marshall, the newcomer against the experience. I guess the guy who's taking his place now at Wigan, and Liam Marshall, I think, probably had his best game in a Wigan shirt two weeks ago. Was that part of the conversation that you had with him today? How he felt about that game?
No, we didn't. We didn't really talk about that. We talked a little bit about the cup tie last year when Sam's first game back from his foot injury, wasn't it, and kicked the drop goal. And then admitted he'd not been practicing kicking because he couldn't because of his foot injury. So we talked about that really. We didn't talk about the most recent game between them.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons is there'll be an audience of about 1 million people watching, hopefully on Saturday. And of those, I should imagine 50, 60,000 will understand the nuances of Wigan against Warrington. Yeah. But 940 odd thousand, a lot of them don't even watch rugby league. A lot of them won't understand the nuances. So we kind of stick to the generals and reignite people's memories of the fantastic game that we had last year, the 2 Challenge Cup finals that Wigan have been in recently. The fact that Warrington dominated the cup for a few years, 2009, 2010, etc. So that we stick more to the kind of the headlines rather than recent events.
Matt, over to you on the Josh Charnley, Liam Marshall thing, and we'll touch on this in our preview show on Thursday with Rob, who's a Warrington fan over in Manly, who's joining us at 5 a.m. Sydney time to join us. That's dedication. How do you see that going? Obviously, the comments that Dave's referred to in the paper today are perhaps taken a little bit out of context from Josh Charnley, but I think that adds a bit of spice, do you think, Matt?
Well, of course it adds spice. That's what articles like that are for. That's what this whole competition is about. Spice between Wigan and Warrington. Wigan spice, Warrington spice, Old Spice. It's going to be spicy. And this whole thing between Marshall and Charnley, I can't wait to see what happens.
It's a really nice subplot, isn't it?
It is, and every fibre of my being is shouting Marshall, as much as we all love Charnley.
Yeah.
It would be great to see exactly the same thing happen, but I don't think it will.
No, I mean, Josh Charnley's obviously had a fantastic start to his Warrington career, and I think he perhaps like the emotion of playing against Wigan 2 weeks ago get to him. He didn't seem like the Josh Charnley. He seemed to be distracted in some ways, but
he did for a worrying moment. There was a worrying moment when he did look very much like the old Josh Charnley.
Yes.
When he made that wonderful break, but after that he wasn't.
The one thing I listened to today, Dave, is your podcast, the 5 Live podcast, which I think the recent one came out yesterday, and you were with about the England Knights setup.
We went behind the scenes with the England Knights. Yeah.
I mean, you obviously spent a bit of time behind the scenes with the England Knights. How important do you think that is moving forward for the World Cup in 3 years' time, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's massively important because you look at, you pick an England team now, and the likelihood is that 60-70% of that team will not be playing when it comes to the World Cup because, Lachlan, even the Burgess, Sam's getting on a bit, James Graham in 3 years' time, where will they be at? So this current crop of England Knights players is massively important that they get nurtured correctly because they are going to be the backbone of the England team, or several of them are going to be the backbone of the England team. So what I like about the Papua New Guinea theory is that they go to a very tough place to tour. That this is not a soft tour to France, a couple of easy wins. They're going to a place that is going to be inhospitable. They're going to have to learn to enjoy each other's company because those who've been to Papua New Guinea will tell you can't go out of the hotel. It's not like being in Australia, wandering down Sydney High Street or Brisbane, or the security is such. I know that I was speaking to Gareth Keir's dad during the last World Cup, and he was following his son around, and he'd stayed at the hotel where his son was staying, where the Welsh team was staying, and there was a big poster of Gareth and a few others down the road at Port Moresby. So at 6 a.m. in the morning, he thought, I'll go for a jog and take a photograph of the lad's poster. And he got to the door, and suddenly security man grabbed him and said, where are you going? Well, I'm going taking a photograph down there. I said, do not go 60 yards down the road. You won't come back with your phone, your trainers, your shorts, or anything, So that's the kind of environment they're going into. So it is one where they learn to tour, where they do learn to bond together as a team, because if you don't, it's a pretty miserable time. So and it's going to be a tough game, 2 tough games, because it's the full Papua New Guinean side, who we saw what they did in the World Cup with all that emotion behind them. So it's going to be a tough 2 games. They'll learn an awful lot, and that really kind of builds them for this World Cup bid in 3 years' time.
It's a really exciting squad as well that they picked. Obviously, there's a lot of Wigan names in there, including the likes of Oliver Gildart, Ryan Sutton, I think Joe Burgess was obviously in there until his season-ending injury. So even that in itself, it's a really good, exciting England side that's going over there. And there's more information about that on the Five Live podcast. And people will have noticed when Dave comes onto the screen, he is in the Five Live studio, and you're on air in about an hour and a half. Is that right? An hour and 45 minutes?
9 o'clock tonight. We've got a program on Five Live. Will Perry of Whippets and Flat Caps fame. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast with him and John Wilkin and Mark Flanagan, which I'd recommend that as the second best podcast available. So Will's hosting tonight. No swearing. Will's hosting tonight, and we've got Steve Price, Warrington coach, and Justin Holbrook, St Helens coach. They're coming in, and we've got, as we said, the chat with Sam, which we'll be playing out in a couple of parts throughout the evening as well. About a 10-minute sit down with Sam, so we hear from him talking about his move to France. Talking about, whether he thinks he can get back in the England side, but also talking a lot about, what Wigan hope to achieve between now and the end of the season, and in particular this cup tie on Saturday. Perfect.
We'll take a couple of questions that we've got coming in. Matt, can I just check what is on the whiteboard behind you? Have you got a poem? What have you done?
I have got a poem. I am fighting poetry with poetry.
Okay. I'll tell you what, before we go to the questions to Dev, and we'll finish with the questions to Dev, do you want to fight poetry with poetry and sort of take Steve?
I will.
Away you go.
Because I feel like someone's trying to pinch my thunder a bit here. So this is a Warrington poem. Price's fingers have now reached a spot that has got the Wolves running hot. And during half-time, they'll be resorting to rhyme. But Wigan will beat them no matter what.
Very nice.
So a quick story on that one. So on Five Live, when we do the sports extra commentaries, we get our producer runs on the field at the end, and we talk live to some of the players, literally as the match is finished. And we love Tom Lynham because he's bonkers. He's absolutely bonkers. So we said to Tom, what was the difference between the first half and the second half? Because obviously they were poor in the first, brilliant in the second. And he said the coach was brilliant. He read us a poem. And just thinking that Tom Lynham, he's bonkers. We went, all right, what was it? Because it'll change your life. And then we speak to Steve Price, and I'm laughing, saying, you'll never guess, Tom Lynham reckons you read them a poem at half time. Yes, I did. So it was all quite. So anyway, yeah.
Well, Matt, I think you can take credit for that. So ever since the first show in February, Matt's been reading a poem on this show to finish the show. And even, I think the fingers on the spot were referring to Matt's hand up a wolf puppet in the a preview that we did for the Warrington game earlier on in the show, which the RSPCA may or may not have been involved in. But let's get some...
We sorted it out of court.
Yeah, and now you're allowed back on. Let's try and get a couple of questions before we let Dave go and prepare for his show. I guess there's two questions here, mainly about Wembley, the future of Wembley and the future of the Challenge Cup, I guess. So we'll take Daniel's question here, which is, Dave, do you think the Challenge Cup is regarded highly as it should be, particularly in comparison with the Grand Final?
No, it's not. It's a hobby horse of mine. It was the BBC's decision back in the day to move the Cup Final from May to August. So there's full responsibility from the BBC. But now the BBC is desperate to move it back. It doesn't work. So the BBC would love to see it back at the end of May, early June, and get those rounds in, bang, 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 one after another, 2 weeks between them, 3 weeks between them, and put the final on in May. As far as, the last year, I think the average viewing figure last year for the Cup Final, was 1.5 million people watched that final last year between Hull and Wigan. And that's still, that's still 1 million people more than watched the grand final. And yet, and that is on the worst day of the year, literally the worst day of the year for television viewing figures. August bank holiday, Monday, is a couple of days away. So half the nation's on holiday. People are outside doing things because it's bank holiday. People are away on holiday. So the television viewing figures are shocking. So to get 1.5 million is pretty good. If you put it on in May and June, you'd be looking at over 2 million, 3 million who don't watch rugby league.
Yeah.
By definition, there are only 200, 300,000 people watching rugby league on a weekly basis, either on Sky or on the Super League show. So if you suddenly present it to 2 or 3 million people, that's an audience who don't get to see it. So why are we not doing the best to make sure as many people as possible see it? And I think it would just increase the relevance of the Challenge Cup. There's a generation below which it doesn't seem to have as much importance anymore because of the grand final. And I'm not knocking the grand final; it's fantastic. That's absolutely terrific. But I think the Challenge Cup needs to be looked after. I refer to it as being rugby league's crown jewels, which we've hid in the attic. It's not the we've been playing for it since 1896. There's not a competition like it in the world in rugby league. 1896, and it's got all that heritage, it's got all that history, and yet we're in danger of just like screwing it up and throwing it in the waste paper bin because of where it's played and when it's played.
Do you think that's something that'll change in the next 5-10 years?
Well, I hope so. I mean, the Beeb have got the contract now till 2021, and we've been pushing for a change for about 2 or 3 years. There's been a bit of a reluctance from Rugby League headquarters, but I think the new chief exec, that's something that he or she will be hard about. So who knows? We'll wait and see.
Perfect. Well, Dave, we'll let you get off and prepare for your show tonight. So
can I just interject there?
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, Dave. With your BBC hat on, right? From the BBC's perspective, what makes a better Challenge Cup match? Is it Wigan beating Warrington or Wigan beating St Helens?
I don't think it matters. I'll tell you what makes what our decision is based on when we choose where we're going. I'll tell you why these two matches have been chosen. Saturday's always the highest profile match.
Yeah.
We always go for the match which is going to look the best. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best game. This weekend, I think it probably is the best game. But for example, I'm not giving any trade secrets away here. We hate going to Huddersfield because it might be Huddersfield against Leeds, and Huddersfield might be at the top of the game, but it looks empty. It looks awful. So we're coming on air going, this is the greatest game in the world. This is a fantastic match this afternoon. The cameras turn around and there's nobody there. So, and I don't know if I've mentioned this last time I was on, forgive me, but Huddersfield drew Leeds in a quarter final. 4 or 5 years, it might be in 2010, something like that, but a while ago when Huddersfield were at the top of their game and Leeds were, and it was the best game of the round. And we said, we're not doing it. We're not doing it on the Saturday because it'll look awful. And the RFL put a bit of pressure on and said, we want to do it, BBC. So we said, we'll do it, but you must make sure that it's sold out. And to be fair, Gary Hetherington at Leeds and got together, he kind of drove it and got together with the Huddersfield people. They put a discount tickets on. They sold the place out. And it was 18,000 who went watched it. We had a bigger viewing figure that day than we got for the final. So that shows you that it's how the occasion looks that is really important. If the occasion looks awful, then no matter how good the game is, then it's like darts. You switch your darts on. There's only 2,000 there, but the place is full and it's rocking, and people get drawn into that. And that's where we miss a trick with rugby league very often. Certainly with the Challenge Cup, clubs don't have season ticket sales for the Challenge Cup. They don't necessarily market it as well as they might do. The crowds are poor, the grounds look poor, and therefore the general impression that we're giving to the non-rugby league public, the general sporting public, is that rugby league's a dying sport. But as soon as you third grade, Saturday, we'll get a great reaction to Saturday because it'll be packed, it'll be great, it'll be raucous, it'll be noisy. Similar probably on Sunday, St Helens and Hull. I should imagine that'll be pretty full as well. Yeah, but, Huddersfield against Catalan would have been a disaster for us because if those two had been second in the Super League and you'd have felt, right, we have to go there, then it would have been an absolute disaster because it would have looked. So I think that's something the game has to bear in mind as well, is that when we're putting games on a big national terrestrial audience, we've got to make sure it looks good as well as it is good.
Yeah, fantastic. Dave, thank you so much. Matt, thank you for taking the time out of your half-term week to join us. And Dave, just to finish on, I think if anybody hasn't seen the Water Splash documentary that the BBC did, even as not a Wakefield fan or a Leeds fan, it's a must watch. It's absolutely fantastic, and congratulations to everyone involved in that.
I jumped on the back of two very talented people in Ricky Wilde and Mike Burke. Mike's a massive rugby league fan. Mike's dad, David Burke, one or two long-term people might remember him playing for Rochdale and Salford on the periphery, but Mike's a massive rugby league fan and he produced it. And Ricky Wilde is a Johnny-come-lately as far as rugby league is concerned, but really talented. And it was those two who put it together. I watched it again today, but I think it's for the 7th time I watched it again today. I was still crying at the end.
It takes you on an emotional roller coaster that you do not expect to go on watching a rugby league documentary. They're just, from the ecstasy of Leeds winning. I'm sure I'm not spoiling anything here by saying that Leeds won the cup.
Don't tell everyone, sure.
Yeah, and then, But yeah, it's a fantastic documentary, and it'd be fantastic and great to see more of those.
Just on that, sorry, I know you want to get rid of it, but
I don't want to get rid of you. I just want you to get prepared. I don't want to be sort of holding you up.
No, the referee, Mr. Hebblethwaite, obviously has a certain reputation in Wakefield for giving that obstruction try. And I kid you not, I was doing a game the other week at Wakefield, and they went to the video referee, and he gave the decision against Wakefield. And there was a fan about 3 rows in front of me, and he went, "Who's the video referee? Hebblethwaite." And you think, it's 50 years. It's 50 years. Let it go. Let it go.
But it still has an effect. That day still lives long in the memory for various reasons.
Because that Don, I think we say in the documentary, Don Fox's missed goal was literally the end of an era.
Yeah.
They were the golden team of the 60s. They beat Wigan in one of the cup finals in the 60s, and in 68 you'd have thought, well, they'll probably kick on again, but they never did. So that's why it's so special to Wakefield fans.
And it'll still be available on iPlayer, I guess, for anybody that hasn't seen it.
Only for the next few days. So
yeah, so definitely check that out. It's a must watch for any rugby league fan, I think. So right, Matt, thank you very much. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. And
I'm going to stay here and carry on talking to myself about rugby league.
Well, I'm sure a few people will listen to you at 9 o'clock.
Okay, thanks for that, Sean.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.